So now we are recording as well. Now let's go to the session pane, the main session pane. So it typically takes a little bit of time for the session to load. So if the session is visible, just click on a yes on that poll, yes, no poll that I just brought into your screen. Because based on your internet connection, it can take a little bit of time. So I want to be sure that it's loading for most of you. All right, so great to see that. The session is loading for all of you. So now let's get into it. Let me first, just give me one sec. Let me ensure that I can annotate on this. Perfect. So before we begin with the core session, let's talk about the motivation. I want to get you guys a little motivated before we get into the crux of the session. Motivation not just for today's session, but motivation for your GMAT journey, for your B school journey, right? Why should you really aim for a score of 730 or higher? Or in other words, why is a score of 700 probably not enough? That's what we're going to talk about. So there are three reasons for why you really need to target a score of 730. And those three reasons are: one, typically nowadays to get into one of the top B schools, you really need a score of 730 or above. That's the first reason that you should really have that ambition to score a higher score of greater than 730. The second reason is about scholarships. So as far as scholarships are concerned, more than 50% of the scholarships typically go to students that score above 730. And the third reason, and this is a reason that is always forgotten, is the difference in earnings between getting into a B school, which is a top tier B school, and getting into a B school that is not at that level. And the difference in earning potential, it comes close to $500,000 if you calculate for a 10-year span. So three very important reasons, but I'm not just going to show this to you, I'm going to prove this to you, and that's where things are going to get interesting. So let's talk about the first point, that is about getting into a top B school. So what I have here is statistical data. So you're talking about the median score of admitted students in 2014 versus the median score of admitted students in 2018. You can see a definite upward trend. So these are some of your top B schools. Some of you may wonder, why are Harvard and Stanford not on this list? The reason they're not on this list is because even in 2014, these guys had a score that was close to 730 in terms of the score you need to typically get in. So Kellogg, MIT Sloan, Columbia, Berkeley, Haas, you see this upward trend towards a higher GMAT score. As Mark Either, the MD of Poets and Quants, puts it, the bottom line is that you really need that high GMAT score to get into some of these top B schools. Now, it gets a little more interesting when we start to look a little deeper. If I look at the trend, 23 out of the top 25 B schools on the planet, you see this positive upward trend of median GMAT score that is required. And universities like Sloan and Columbia have actually provided enhanced data about their batch profiles, which allows us to find out that 80% of the batch in a Sloan or a Columbia is composed of students who got 700 or higher. In other words, the implication is that if you're not going to get a score that is that good, your chances of getting into some of these top colleges are limited. Even despite the fact that the overall number of test takers has actually come down. There has been a decline in the overall GMAT test taking population, and despite that, you're seeing this trend towards an increased GMAT score. So that's very interesting. That was statistical data. Let me also provide you some anecdotal data. So thankfully at e-GMAT we have a history of success. So we have a lot of success stories. If you just check out our YouTube channel, you'll see that. Nishant was our student, initially scored a 690. He got rejected by Tuck, which is one of the top 10 B schools. Tuck actually gave him proper feedback. They told him, hey, we love your candidacy, but the problem is your GMAT score does not cut it. Indian male 690, you're not going to get anywhere. He got a 740 and converted Ohio Fisher, Columbia, the works. Pravi, very similar story. 680, got rejected to multiple B schools. 740, converted. Georgetown, UCLA, Kellogg, etc., etc. Krishnakant scored a 680. He actually got rejected by 15 B schools with a score of 680. Prepared again, prepared hard, scored a 720, got full fellowships from Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, etc. He's currently studying at Georgia Tech. So what I'm trying to tell you is your GMAT score, if your objective is to get to one of those top B schools, your GMAT score really, really matters. Keep that in mind. That's the first point. The second point that we talked about was the scholarship. 350 million is roughly the amount of merit-based scholarships that is given to you, that is awarded by USB schools to students. e-GMAT is roughly around 40 to 50 million each year is actually what goes to e-GMAT students. So we have a lot of data to make analysis of this. And what we have been able to estimate is that 55%, roughly 55% of this 350 million actually goes to people who score 740 or higher. And if you lower the bar slightly, 710 or higher, that's 80% of people getting those scholarships. So that tells you again that there is definitely some link between your GMAT score and your scholarship amount, your chances of getting a scholarship. And indeed, all data that we have suggests that there are two factors that decide your scholarships. One is your interview. Even if you get a GMAT score, you also have to do well in your interview, of course. But the GMAT score does matter, even from a point of view of scholarships. So keep that in mind. Yet again, we have anecdotal data from our own students. Mansi, who got into Harvard, Victor, who got into Ross, as well as Keenan Fagler, and Kong Bui. In Kong's case, the university liked him so much that in addition to his tuition fee, they also gave him additional stipend. That's basically pocket money. So when you get the session PDF, these are all clickable links. You can actually view these success stories. And I strongly advise that you do, because it actually, these are the stories of people who have been through that journey that you're on right now. So you can learn a lot from this. So coming back to the people we started with, Nishant, Pravi, Krishnakant, the trend is the same. A higher GMAT score seems to at some level impact your scholarship. Ayush is a very interesting case. This is a case where you get waitlisted because your GMAT score is not good enough, and then all you have to do is get a good score and you get an admit. So Ross and Columbia waitlisted him with a score of 710, which a lot of you do consider a good score, but that was not good enough. His interview went very well. He actually reached out to the people at Ross. They actually told him, hey, again, we love your candidature, but boss, Indian male 710 is not going to get you anywhere. So he worked on it. He got a 750. He updated his score. These waitlists converted to admits. So again, it's a very interesting success story. You should check it out when you can. If you check our YouTube channel, this is slightly outdated. Now we're hitting at least 160, if I recall correctly. You'll see a lot of such success stories from students who have been there and done that. Make sure you do that. As the former admissions director of Ross says it, puts it in the best possible way. Someone with a 770 GMAT, much more likely to get a financial reward than someone with a 670. Essentially, the B school is buying the GMAT score. They want people. The GMAT score is at some level, it's a proxy of your ability. So people are looking at that. That's your takeaway. The third and final reason, and it's a somewhat underrated reason that people don't really consider, is the difference in earning potential. And it's very interesting. To prove this, we're going to take a look at two universities, Babson and MIT. Both these universities are located like 20 miles away. Both of them are located in the Boston area. And what's interesting about this is 70% of the students from both these places get jobs typically in the New England area. So what that's supposed to indicate is they have access to the same kinds of opportunities typically. But in reality, if you look at the salary comparison, it tells us a different story. Your B school graduate coming out of MIT gets, and this number has increased, it's much higher than what it is on this particular slide. Fundamentally, there's a huge difference between both the median base salary and the average sign-in bonus. Now, even if you take a conservative estimate for a 10-year period where you don't consider the bonus at all, you would see that it roughly comes to around 45 million. It comes close to your 0.5 million mark. So just schools which are located just 20 miles away, having access to the same kind of opportunities, but one is considered a tier 1B school, one is not. And what do you need to get into something like MIT? You need that 730 score. Keep that in mind. Very, very important. What I'm trying to do here is provide you that motivation to get that 730. So fundamentally, there are three reasons. Keep that in mind. If you aim to get into one of those top B schools, don't settle for a 700. Those 30 points can make a lot of difference. Try your best to get into those. So we can help you do that. If you're interested in looking at a study plan, which can help you do better on the GMAT, it's good to have a plan typically, as in you could wing it, but your chances of success are much better if you have a proper plan. And e-GMAT can help you with that. So how can we help you with that? We can give you a personalized study plan that is tailored to your needs very, very specifically, because things vary as per you, right? I am very strong in RC. I'm not as strong in SC. So the time that I should be preparing, the time that I should be putting into SC is not as much, is much more than what I should be putting in RC. So if you can precisely estimate how much time you need for each section, broken down to subsection, we can do that for you. We can help you set those personalized milestones. It will take in parameters such as what is your target GMAT score, what is your current ability, when are you planning to write the test. There are even factors like how much study time can you factor in into a weekday, into a Saturday, into a Sunday. All that is taken into account to create a very concrete study plan. Most important point here is the metrics part. It's not just important to have a plan. How do you know if you're proceeding as per plan? How do you know that things are going well? You need data and metrics to tell you that you're on track. And if you're veering off track, you need a way to get back on track. Your data should tell you where to focus so that that course correction happens. So we can help you with that. So the link is here. For those of you interested right now, we do have slots open. But as with study plan, it's always limited slot because it is based on the availability of our experts as well, strategy experts as well. So this one is always limited slots. For those of you who feel like this will help you, do try it out. If you click on that link, you can actually choose this case study that applies to you. Maybe you're stuck at 700, maybe you have timing issues, whatever your issue is, click on that. You will see a case study of an example. You will see an example of a student who went through your journey and cracked it and got through it. So that would lead you to fixing a slot. Right now we do have slots available as far as the information that I have, but these slots fill fast, so be careful with that. Choose a slot and then our strategy expert will get in touch with you. If you are an e-GMAT student, you already have access to your study plan. If you don't have already, reach out to our support team, ensure that you have it. Attend the onboarding sessions that we have and make sure that you follow the processes that we lay out for you. All right. So with that, let me talk about how do you target, how do you improve your RC to that point? What does it take? Let me open this, let me clear this. Perfect. So what I've given you so far is a little bit of motivation to get that 730 plus score. Now you know why you should get that score. The next obvious question is, what should you do as far as RC is concerned, because this is an RC session? What is it that you need to do to get that 730 score or higher? The answer as far as RC is concerned, the ability that you should target is 90th percentile. You need this level of ability to pull off that kind of a result. Now the question is, how do you do that? Before that, we need to understand your approach. So what we're going to do now is a series of diagnosis questions. The only way to do self-improvement is to understand where you currently stand, to understand your current approach. Before I proceed with our approach, you should know the current approach. So there are two components that I'm interested in. The first is your motivation, and the second is your method. Both of these are very important components of your approach. So first question for all of you, how many of you truly, and I mean this very, very truly, how many of you truly enjoy reading comprehension? That's the first question. And this is a low, around 300 of you here. This is a completely low risk environment. Nobody's judging you. Nobody's judging me. Feel free to be brutally frank. If topic is interesting, of course, I understand that. So the results are extremely striking. So a lot of you like CR, some of you like SC, but in general, what I see with RC is a lot of people do not enjoy RC. So for those of you, for the 71% of you who say that you do not enjoy RC, on the short answer pod, why do you not enjoy RC? Let's find that. What is it that you do not enjoy about RC? Why do you dislike RC? Let's hear some thoughts, and let me broadcast this as well. boring to read topic. I lose the link often. We'll definitely address that in today's session. Topic is also something we would address, interesting topics. Complex, lengthy read. Z, so you just sleep off. Dense passages, complex language used. It disturbs your timing in the exam. Absolutely. We're going to discuss, there are quite a few things that you guys have mentioned here that we are going to discuss today. For instance, we are going to discuss timing. We are going to discuss about topics, and how to approach dense passages. So definitely my hope is that by the end of this session, at least for a good number of you, definitely you'll feel a little better about your RC. Now, the second piece of information I'm interested in is your method. So what is your current method? If I ask you a question, that is, what is your current approach to RC? There are typically three ways of going about this. You have people who skim through the passage. These are the people who, if it could be one of you, these are the people who skim through the passage in 2 minutes. Even if it's a monster passage that's like 450, 500 words, you might be the person who skims through the passage in 2-3 minutes and then just rushes into the questions. The second approach is a questions first approach. You don't read the passage up front. You read the questions and then go attack the passage as per wherever the question leads you. And the third approach is you read the passage, you take a little bit of time initially, and then you go to the questions. So the question I have for you is, which of these is the methods that you follow? You can put the answer here. What is your approach to RC? So quite a few skimmers. So around 60, around 2/3 of the batch says approach 3, and around 1/3 of the batch is saying skim through a question first. So it's very interesting. The next question I have for you is, how has it worked out for you? So if I give you a question like this, if I give you a situation like this is a situation that I'm familiar with, but I want to know if this is a situation that you guys are familiar with. How often do you see that, hey, you thought you read the passage well, but then you went to the questions and you got stumped? How many of you have faced this? Absolutely. It's a vast majority of us, right? We have all faced the situation, irrespective of the approach that we do. So if you ask me, in our opinion, skimming through the passage is not the way to do GMAT RC. I'm not commenting about your GRE or CAT or any of those other exams. But as far as GMAT RC is concerned, skimming is a recipe for disaster. Question first, probably even worse. You're not even gone through the passage. Reading the passage and taking time is the approach that we would like you guys to incorporate. So for those of you who are following approach 1 and approach 2, one of my objectives from this session is to convert you to approach 3. For those of you who are already following approach 3, hopefully through this session, you guys will get a little better at it. You'll see the correct way of doing it. You might be doing the right thing, but you should also be doing the right thing the right way. So maybe I can help you with that as well. So the last question I have for you, and this is one of my favorite questions because you should always know what is your own current level. So if I ask you, once you've read a passage, what is your current level of understanding? Just 1 minute, I'm bringing the poll to you. Your current level of understanding, once you have read a passage, where do you judge yourself? Question first seems like a good idea. Yes, but on the GMAT, it's a trap idea. The problem with question first, by the way, is it biases your thinking. You're not reading the passage with an objective lens. Because test makers put traps in the question. If you get biased, then it's very difficult to get an objective read on the passage. All right, so a majority, half the batch is at 50 to 75%. This is your own self-assessment, where you put yourself. So let me also tell you what it takes to get that 730 plus. In terms of percentage ability, 90%. You should, once you read a passage, you should have that confidence that I've understood at least 90% of this passage. If you are at that level, when you go to the questions, it will make a huge difference, and that's what I'm going to show you. All right, this session, in brief, what are we going to do? Like I said, my goal today is to help you improve in reading comprehension, help you ace reading comprehension To do that, you need to know how to extract the maximum possible from the passage. And to do that, I'm going to introduce to you certain reading strategies, and then Shraddha will take it forward with a full-length example. We're going to introduce some reading strategies, and we're going to demonstrate how do we use these strategies. That's the first step. But it's not enough if I just do that. You also have to know how to use this information to answer questions. So we're going to take two small passages. Through these small passages, we're going to see the reading strategies. We're going to demonstrate how to use them, and we're going to see how to answer questions using this enhanced level of understanding. But we are not done with this. Even after this, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we are going to take it forward, apply whatever you learn in 1 and 2 to try and solve a full-length OG passage. So this would be not an e-GMAT passage, it will be an official passage. This is a 700 level passage that you guys would solve using the approach that you learn here. So I hope you guys are excited. How many of you are ready to learn? Let's hear a few yeses. There are quite a few people in this session. I want to see a lot of participation. Perfect. Perfect. That's great. That's great. Because remember, guys, it is a slightly heavy session. So it will take a little bit of your patience as well. You need to really get in. So the first part which I have to talk about, in the first important piece that you need to understand is the attitude that is required to crack RC. The reason I asked that question, how many of you truly enjoy RC, is it is really important to start enjoying RC. Why would RC smile at you if you don't smile at it? In simple words, a lot of you have apprehensions regarding, hey, topic. If it's a topic I do not like, then it's really hard for me. I find it boring if it's not a topic. Some of you are worried about length. It's a very, very dense passage. Oh my God, it's running to 4 paragraphs. How do I get through this? It's a pain. Some of you are worried about the denseness of the language. I'm just writing it as dense, but the complexity of the language. What you need to realize is you are heading into solving an RC passage with all these negative things in mind. That attitude will not help you solve anything. What do I mean by that? You cannot look at an RC passage, oh my God, this is a passage about gender studies. I know nothing about this. I'm going to struggle. How are you going to do well if you go in with that attitude? The attitude that you need to have to do well in RC is whatever the topic is, hey, I'm going to spend 3 or 4 minutes reading what this author has to say. In these 3-4 minutes, I'm going to learn everything that is possible about that topic. That is the attitude that you have. So you reach a point where I don't care if the topic is quantum physics. I don't care if the topic is gender studies. I don't care if the topic is American conservatism. It does not matter. I am still going to enjoy reading it. I'm still going to learn something from it at the end of the day. In those 3 to 4 minutes, my entire attention is going to be on that passage. My job is purely to understand every nut and bolt the author is trying to say. That is the attitude that you need to have. This is what we call as immersion. Some of you may have that question, how do you do that? First, have the end goal in mind. You want that 730, 750, 760 score. You want 90th percentile RC ability. To do that, you have to truly immerse in the passage. And it's not just some buzzword. When we do the passage right now, you're going to see how we are going to immerse. You'll see what I mean in like another 10 minutes. All right. So go in with that mindset of, I don't care what the topic is. I don't care what is the length of the passage. I don't care what kind of language is used in the passage. I'm still going to crack it. If you go in with that attitude, trust me, RC is not difficult at all. You'll find it very, very easy. It's very important. Keep that in mind. Now let's go to the actual method. What are we going to do today? There are 3 key reading strategies that I'm going to introduce to you. The first is at the sentence level. The sentence level is the molecular level as far as a passage is concerned. If you look at a passage, sentences form paragraphs, paragraph form passages. Sentence stands at the molecular level. We're going to see how to read sentences, how to infer the true meaning of sentences, especially when you have complicated, complex sentences. How do we break it down into small chunks and understand chunk by chunk? You're going to see that. The second reading strategy we're going to discuss is one of my favorites. It's called keywords. What are keywords? Keywords are specific words or phrases that are used by the author in a GMAT RC passage, either to convey some specific meaning or to, write his or her passage in a very logical, to ensure that there is a logical, coherent structure to it. I'll give you an example of a keyword right now so that you understand this. Imagine that you're reading this RC passage and there is a sentence which says work from home has improved work from home has improved the productivity of employees. All right. So that's the statement that you just read. Or in other words, something positive about work from home. Hey, it has improved the productivity of employees. And then you see the next sentence starts with this word, however. All right. The minute you see however, typically, if you are skimming the passage, if you're rushing through the passage, what you do is you don't pay attention to that word. You just rush through it. What I want you to do from today, when you see this word however, pause there. Ask the question, why did the author put this however here? And the answer to this question is, however indicates some kind of contrast. So you guys tell me, what is going to come? What is going to follow? The work from home, something positive has been said about work from home. And then you see the word however. What will logically follow in the next line? Exactly. Negatives, contrast, something negative about it. You guys are getting this. You guys all know this. What I want you to do is pay attention to this next time when you read an RC passage. If you do that, what that does is you already know that what follows is a negative. So even if it's complicatedly worded, you have a very good sense of what the author is trying to do. It improves your comprehension by leaps and bounds. You're going to see that. The last reading strategy that we're going to discuss today is something that's very, very underrated. For some of you who gave those comments that, hey, some of you who wrote here that I get lost in the passage, it's very, very difficult to keep track of the thread of what's happening. That for me is because you guys are not summarizing enough. The passages are complex, but if you summarize at key points, you will be able to understand what's happening. And we're going to see this. Whenever you hit a point of information overload, whenever you get the sense that, oh my God, there's so much, I'm not able to understand what's happening. What did I just read? Whenever you get that sense, right now, a lot of you make the mistake of just pushing through it because you're worried about time or whatever it is. What you really need to do is you need to pause there. And then you need to pause there. You need to summarize what you have read so far in your own words. That understanding will help you understand what follows easily. If you have not understood para 1, for example, how will you understand para 2, which is extending a concept from para 1? It's very difficult, which is why this is the most underrated skill, which a lot of you are not doing, and that's the reason you might be faltering. So yeah, if you will get it by email, etc. Don't worry about PDF as well. All right. Perfect. You do summarizing, but you end up writing the whole para. Oh, then you're not summarizing, that you're just rewriting the whole thing. Summarization is if you can explain it in your own words in 1 or 2 lines, that's summarization. All right. So that's the theory of it. Now we are going to do practicals. How many of you are looking forward to question 1? Let's hear a yes, auspicious yes, so that we can start. Perfect. Remember, I'm not going to time you here. You guys are going to time yourself. Because at this point, we are just still learning the concept. All right. So once you're done reading the passage, click on yes in the done reading poll that I'll bring right now. Here you go. Read the passage. All right, a lot of you are done reading. So what I'm going to do is I'll ensure that you have the passage for reference if any of you still needs to refer to it. So just give me one sec. Let's bring that passage in. So you guys should have the passage at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to bring the question in right now. So just 1 minute. Let's. So those of you who are solving, please click on still solving. You see this option called still solving, right? That's to ensure that we can time you. I mean, you guys can time yourself rather than me timing you. When a majority of the batch is done answering, I can move on. So please click on still solving before we go to the question. Quickly, guys. All of you who are trying this, around almost 300 people here. You should be having more participation. Come on. All right, so here's the question. It's a main point question, by the way. All right, guys, let's get our answers in, and then we can get into discussion. Let's take another 10 seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1, and I'm gonna end this poll right now. There you go. So let me broadcast the results. It shows that even within this batch, there is only one correct answer, by the way, but even for the very first question, we do have so much of variation. So the most popular answer choice was option D. It's chosen by around 43% of you. And you can see the other options, 21%, 25%. So B and C are also somewhat popular. We're going to discuss that as well. All right. So let's quickly hear your thoughts on this. How did you find this particular question on that short answer pod, guys? Let me reopen that poll. Was it easy to read? Was it difficult? Or you found it very, very easy? So mixed bag. Some of you find it easy, some of you find it difficult, some of you are like too many technical terms, like what the hell is this? Perfect. Now we're gonna break it down and understand it to a level where you would feel that this is not that difficult at all. Let's get right to it. So pay close attention to how we are doing this, all right? And let me clear this as well. Yeah. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. I'm going to pause here because there's a lot of information right here. Question 1 for you, and let me actually take out this. We'll come back to this in some time. Let's also take this out. And let's expand the short answer pod. First question for you. I'm gonna ask questions, and through these questions, you guys are gonna understand this by yourself. What is meant by bordering on the extreme? Why did the author put this here? What is the author trying to tell you? when you say bordering on the extreme? What does that mean? Extreme definition. That's actually what you're looking at. So you see bordering on the extreme, one definition of whatever it is, X, Y, Z, I don't care. By saying bordering on the extreme, the author is telling us that this particular definition, this one definition, whatever it is, it's a little extreme. Or in other words, it's a little exaggerated. What is meant by extreme? You have the means and you have the extreme, right? Mean is your average. This is what you expect to see. Something at the extreme, it's a little over the top, it's a little exaggerated. So the first inference that you draw right here, the first piece of information that you decode, that's just the first 4 lines. Bordering on the extreme should tell you that whatever definition you're looking at, it is a slightly exaggerated definition. Everybody with me so far? Let's hear yeses on that short answer if you're clear with this. This is just the first point. From the first 4 words. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism, let's call ethnocentrism as EC for short. Second question for you. Why does the author say one definition? What does it indicate? What can you infer from one definition? If I ask you that question, what will you tell me? Definitely there's more than one, that's true. But there's also one other point that I want to see. So all of you are getting one aspect of it. That is that, hey, when you say one definition of EC, in all probability you have other definitions also. That is true. But the other inference that I want you to draw is that I'm the author. I'm telling you there is this one definition of EC. I never told you that I agree with it. You don't know whether it is the author's definition. Yes, some of you have put it right here. It's not necessarily the author's definition. The author may agree with it, may not agree with it. I do not know. It's like, it's one definition of EC. I'm not saying this is the definition of EC. Do you guys see that now? That's a very important point. If you guys see that, then understanding this passage is very, very easy. So 2 points. The first thing is, one definition means there could be more than one definition, definitely. It indicates that there's probably more than one definition. Point 2, it indicates that it's not necessarily the definition the author agrees with. It's just one definition out of the many possible. I'm not telling you that I agree with it. That's very important to note. So just from the first 8 words, there are 2 pieces of information that we extracted. You guys see the beauty of going slow? That's what I want you to do. Let's move on now. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. Let's hold here, it's getting very complex. I do not know what schismatic means, by the way, but it's okay. We'll try to figure it out over if it's necessary. When I see in-group, out-group differentiation, can I say that it says there is some difference between the in-group and the out-group, whatever those groups are? That much you can infer, right? Even if you don't know what schismatic means, I can say one definition of EC says that there is this differentiation between the in-group and the out-group. That's something you should be able to infer. Now let's move on. In which is a keyword which indicates that what follows is the description of this particular definition. You're going to see a full-fledged description here. Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. Pause here. When you see such complicated things, you should try to summarize it. Understand what it's trying to say. If you had to write that in your own words, in one short sentence, how would you put it? Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, devotion to the in-group. If you had to put it in your own words. In-group equal to good, that's good. Positive facts for in-group, excellent. Love towards in-group, also excellent. You guys are getting this, right? So all this indicates some positive sentiment towards the in-group. It's as simple as that. You guys got this. Now let's move on. So there is this definition of EC which considers it some kind of a difference between in-group and out-group. What is the difference exactly? In which some positive sentiment towards your in-group is correlated with. What is meant by correlated with? That's again a keyword. In other words, what is correlation? Relation, connection, linked, perfectly. Perfect. These are the answers. All those answers are correct. It's at some level, this positive feeling towards your in-group is linked with a state of hostility towards outgroups, or in other words, some negative feeling, like hate, whatever you want to say. So positive feeling towards your in-group is linked with a negative feeling towards your out-group. That is what you should have got from this particular sentence. See, it's a very complex sentence, but see how by breaking it down, we are extracting the meaning. How many of you are seeing what we are doing here? You guys summarized it. I just asked you how to summarize. You guys summarized it. State of hostility, hate. That's absolutely negative, right? And you guys are doing this, not me, by the way. So, bordering on the extreme. So, as per the author, there is this definition of EC, which considers it to be some difference between in-group and out-group, in which, or in other words, this differentiation is that there is this positive feeling towards the out-group, which is linked with a negative feeling towards the out-group, which are often perceived as subhuman and or the incorporation of evil. Yet again, subhuman gives one clue. That it tells you that the group you're referring to is not some group of apples or oranges, it's a group of people. Human. Or you could say it's another term for racism, maybe, without getting into that. But you're right. So, you guys got this. Exaggerated definition. This particular definition says, love for your own people linked to hatred towards outside people. I had this on the slide, but the same answers came from all of you. The difference is, I asked you the right questions. Now let's see. Basically from this one short passage, which is actually just one sentence, you guys should have got the following 3 points. It essentially, firstly, one definition of EC is given. We don't know it's necessarily the author's opinion. Whether the author agrees with that definition, we have no idea. The author tells us that this particular definition is a little exaggerated or extreme. And what does this definition say? Love for your own people is correlated with hate for outside people. Now, the question I have for you is, how many of you did not get all this? So let me put that to a poll. Just one sec. How many of you select the items that you are not able to understand? There are 3 points here, right? Which point did you not get? That's very interesting to find out. And it tells you where currently in your approach you may be lacking. It's a very good diagnostic question. That's why I like this. So 30% did not get 1, 30% did not get 2, another 25% did not get 3. 30% of you got all, which I'm very happy to see. Absolutely. So that's very interesting. So look at what you did not get, because it's indicative of what you might not have, what you might be struggling with. For example, if you had focused on this particular keyword, that is one definition, it gives you a layer of meaning. Firstly, that there are probably more than one definition, and secondly, it's not necessarily the author's definition. 2 pieces of meaning just from that one word, that 2 words, whatever it is. Now, the definition is a bit exaggerated. This you will get if you focused on bordering on the extreme. This is why I say you have to break down your sentences. Imagine skimming this in 2 minutes and saying bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. You'll just rush through it without understanding why bordering on the extreme is there. But if you had spent like 2-3 seconds in your reading asking the question what does bordering on the extreme really mean, then you'll figure out that this definition is exaggerated. And the third piece, this you will get if you're effectively able to summarize. Can you see the mapping here between the reading strategies and the specific points that you missed out on? Yep, exactly. He feels, as for somebody asking that question, he feels that the definition is exaggerated. He does not say whether he likes it or not. We have no idea. We don't know whether he agrees, by the way. Yeah, to be fair, the author definitely is not agreeing directly because he says it's exaggerated. I agree with you. Somebody pointed it out correctly. Perfect. So, how many of you are feeling a little better after this? You felt you learned something here? Perfect. So now let's kind of look at the answer choices as well. All right. What is the main purpose of, or in other words, what is the main point of this particular paragraph? Why did the author write this passage? Some of you chose option A, around 7% of you chose option A, which says to criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people not belonging to the same group. Everything you see in red is the reason it's wrong, by the way. So, does the author criticize the concept of ethnocentrism or one particular definition of ethnocentrism? Which he, by the way, because he's criticizing it, he does not even agree with that particular definition. As per the author, that definition is not the real definition. So has the author really criticized ethnocentrism? That's the first question you should ask. The answer is no. The other reason why it's wrong is, even if that definition is the actual definition, where does it say that it encourages hostility? All you saw was there is this difference between in-group and out-group, where love for in-group is linked to hate for out-group. That is just love and love being linked to hate. There is no encouragement happening, right? You don't know whether it encourages hostility. So these two words are the reason option A is wrong. For those of you who chose option A, I hope this brings some clarity. Else put it on the Q&A, will help you out. Option B, again, was a somewhat popular option. 21% of you chose this. Option B says to evaluate the concept of EC while enlisting its various features. What you saw was the definition of EC, not the features. That's the first thing you should realize. It's not like the features of ethnocentrism is peace, loyalty, etc. No, that is a definition of EC. Whatever the peace, loyalty is correlated with hate for outgroup. In love for in-group correlated with hate for outgroup. That is a definition of EC. There is a difference between features and definitions. We are not discussing features here. That's the first point. More importantly, more interestingly, there is no evaluation happening. When evaluation fundamentally means you're assessing something. To do that, you have to present the pros and the cons. Typically in GMAT RC, if you don't see pros and cons, that's not an evaluation at all. So there is no pros and cons being discussed here. That's the first thing you would understand. And more importantly, he's not evaluated ethnocentrism. He's talked about one particular definition of ethnocentrism, which is not the same as the concept. Which is why option B is also not the right answer. There is no evaluation happening and we're not talking about features. Definition cannot be related. Definition can talk about features, but it's not the same. All right. So let's go to option C. Option C was the most popular incorrect option choice. And the reason so many, 25% of you fell for option C is you do not understand what one definition means. Because option C says to define the concept of EC. Question, did the author define EC? That's the second reason. The hierarchy is also true. That's why I marked it in red. There is no hierarchy. That's another reason why it's wrong. But even before that, does the author define EC? No. The author gave us one extreme definition of EC. He did not define EC. That's the second part. Hierarchy is also a reason for those of you who are mentioning it. Which is why the only correct answer here is option D. To introduce the concept of EC by presenting a view on it. So some of you may ask, but he's not defined EC. So can you say that he's introduced EC? Does anybody have this question? But he did not present a definition, his own definition of EC, his or her own definition of EC. But so can you say that he introduced it? The answer is yes. Now imagine tomorrow you're coming to my house for a party. Listen, imagine you're coming tomorrow to my house for a party. I have a friend of mine. I introduce you to this friend of mine. I do not give you any opinion on this fellow. I do not tell him that he's a good guy, he's a bad guy, nothing. I just introduced you to that person. I can introduce you to something without presenting my opinion on it. Do you guys get that? That's the point, right? I introduced you to my friend without presenting my opinion of that friend. Similarly, what the author has actually done in this, he has introduced to us, the reader, something called ethnocentrism, this particular concept that is called ethnocentrism. But he did not give us the official definition. He did not give us what the definition he agrees with. All he did was presented one extreme definition. But eventually he did introduce us to EC, right? That's the point. Eventually, end of the day, he has introduced us to this thing called EC. Did we get something about EC from this passage? Yes. Yes, got it. Perfect. Exactly. Bordering on the extreme means it's an extreme definition. It's an exaggerated definition, whatever follows. Perfect. I'm happy to see so many of you got it. So, quickly to summarize, There are some learnings that I want you guys to take away from this example before we move to the next example. It's very important to synthesize our learnings. What is it that you do not need to do well in GMAT RC? You do not need to be an English scholar. You do not need to know the meaning of each and every word, or you need not be able to construct extremely complex sentences. Not necessary at all. Remember, we still don't know what the meaning of schismatic is. At least I don't know. I don't know about you guys. I don't know what the meaning of schismatic is. Did it stop me from understanding the meaning of the passage? The answer is no. You will always come across words that you do not understand. I want you to get rid of that fear that, oh my god, there is this word I don't understand. There's no way I'll get. No problem. GMAT is not intended as a test of vocabulary. I don't know about GRE, but GMAT is not intended as a vocabulary test. It's intended as a test of logical ability. Even there will be words that you don't understand, but you will be able to manage without knowing that. By presenting a view could be anybody's view. It's not necessarily the author's view. Good question. So I want you to get rid of this fear of not knowing words. It's okay. Some basic level of words we all need to know, but schismatic, anthropomorphic, and all those complicated kind of words, it's okay if you don't know. You're not expected to know everything. The next point I need you to understand is complex sentences. This entire passage was just one big sentence. You saw how we broke it down to manageable chunks. This is what I mean by sentence structure. How we broke it down into chunks. Bordering on the extreme told you something. One definition show you something. Before that correlated positive feeling towards your people, negative feeling to the outside people. We broke it down and understood this beautifully. That's what I need you to understand. The other point I want you to know, for those of you who are worried about, hey, I don't know anything about this topic. Does it matter? How many of you know what ethnocentrism is? How many of you come from that background where you know about ethnocentrism? Most of us don't. That's the reality of it. I'm assuming that over 90% of the batch here does not know anything about ethnocentrism, because I also belong to the same category. Did it matter? This is what I mean when I say that you have to go in with that approach that I don't care what the topic is. Ethnocentrism, super, no problem. Quantum physics, bring it on. That is the attitude you should have. That's possible. If you are able to follow these reading strategies, if you are able to apply this to 40 to 50 passages effectively, you will reach a level where you're truly topic agnostic. You reach a point where I don't care what the topic is, I don't care what the length is, I don't care at all. I'll still be able to crack it. Science, humanities, it does not matter. So what the next question is, what exactly really matters? 100% immersion. You saw how we went into this. We went in first with the right attitude. Understand what the author is telling. That's my objective. I don't care what the topic is. I don't care about the length. How to manage time with your approach. We'll talk about time once the core session is done. Time is one of the points that I'm going to address towards the end. Don't worry. It is possible. That's why we are here. We have been here. We've been successful. It's possible. Believe me. So 100% immersion in the passage. It didn't matter that it was talking about a topic that I don't know about and probably don't like also, but it did not matter. 100% immersion. Then we saw how we applied those strategies. We broke down that big sentence, chunk by chunk understood. We focused on those keywords, in which told us something, one definition told us something, and summarization, very, very important. So, how many of you are feeling a little more confident right now about your RC? So keep this in mind. Now we are going to apply this. I want all of you to apply this to the next question. Approach is going to be the same. Once you're done reading the passage, just click on done reading. The difference is this is a GMAT inference question. It's not a main point question. All right. Here's your passage. All right, so now I'm gonna bring the question to you. So as always, if you want the passage, it's at the bottom. You can refer it here. And let me take this out. So as always, guys, please click on still solving before we get into it. Participate, guys. That's how you get feedback. That's how you learn. Be active participants as much as you can. All right, so here's question 2. It's an inference question, mind you. All the best. Start putting your answers in, folks, and then we'll discuss this one as well. All right, last 10 seconds, and then we're going to discuss this. 3, 2, 1, and end poll. All right, so how was this question? How did you find this? And also, tell me about did it help? Did what you read, what you saw in the last thing, did it help you? Did you find it a little easier? Okay. So how many of you found it difficult? Easy, bit harder, confused between two choices? Absolutely. Super complex. Okay, we'll simplify that. Perfect. So none of these are easy, by the way. Both these passages are difficult because of the dense language that is used. But the point is, if you apply the right processes, if you follow the right strategies, none of these are difficult. All right, so let's see how you guys performed. I'm going to broadcast the results. So yet again, there's a huge mix here. It's not like one particular option was favored over the other. A, B, and D, I mean, A, B, and E are very, very popular. D is also somewhat popular. It's only option C that most of you did not choose. And I actually know why you did not choose that as well. Yes, deemed to. We are actually going to discuss that. So we're going to take a slight detour. Before we discuss the passage itself, here's a question for you. If I am the author, I am telling you the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. The question is, which can be inferred and which cannot be inferred? And let me bring the poll for this. Just one sec. Oh yeah, here it is. Just 1 minute. open the poll. Here you go. The question is very simple. Which of the two statements can be inferred, or can both be inferred? Just like the last question, there's a very important learning point here, which I want to emphasize. Yeah, let me broadcast the results. So perfect. There's something here, right? 70% of you say that only the first statement can be inferred. That means 30% feel that statement 2 is also legit. There's only one correct answer. 75% of you have got the correct answer. You can only infer the very first statement. And I'll tell you why. Typically, you would think that, hey, this is the author is just putting it in passive voice and saying the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect. The problem with passive voice, the problem with the way the sentence is written is, you're not 100% sure who is doing this consideration. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect, but does the author also consider? We don't know. If an inference, by the way, is something that you're 100% sure about. All right. The minute you read the statement, the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people, you're not 100% sure that the author also considers. So all I know is there are definitely some people, at least, who consider the color blue to be soothing. But is the author in that group of people? I do not know. Which is why the only correct answer is this one, the first one. Do you guys see this? It's very similar, by the way, to your last question. When you saw one definition, let me just reopen the short answer port. Do you guys see this? It's very similar to one definition. One definition is not necessarily the author's definition. Similarly, considered to have. You're not 100% sure whether the author is also part of that group who considers to have. That's a very important key point for you. When can you be sure that the author also agrees with it? Something like this. The color blue has a soothing effect. Here you're 100% sure it is the author. Author is telling you, if I'm the author, I'm telling you color blue has a soothing effect on the moods of people. That's your learning. That's a very important learning. If you figure this out, then when you come to now let's get into the passage. As again, pay a lot of attention to the passage analysis and how we do this, all right? Then when you see this deemed to be, you can immediately see it's the same as considered to be. Now, for a lot of you who chose options like D, you will see why it's wrong. Deemed essentially means considered. It's the same. So, ethnocentrism, EC, and its canonical variants. Some of you may know the meaning of canonical. I also know it's something like identical, but even if you don't know, it's okay, just move on. EC and its variants are deemed to be or considered to be intimately connected with xenophobia. Let's call this XP for simplicity. We will come to the options, don't worry, don't rush, we'll get to it. Right now, focus on the passage. This is again part of the process. When you're reading the passage, don't jump to the options. It's not the right way. EC and its variants are considered to be intimately connected with XP. Or in other words, there are some people who believe that EC and XP are connected, not necessarily the author. Do you guys get that? Very first line. We are here right now. We are covered till XP. Perfect. Now let's follow. So EC and its variables deemed to be connected with XP. And then you have a comma and then a complex attitude system cum sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien and everything that the stranger or alien represents. Let's pause here. Let's understand this. What did I tell you you should do when you read a lot of complex text which is a little tough to understand? It seems like, oh my god, this seems like a lot to understand. What should you do? Pause, break it down, summarize. Exactly. I told you, right? In the introduction that you should start summarizing this. Understand what is it? Because if you move on from here, you may not even understand what's happening. So let's try to do that summarization exercise here. You guys summarize and tell me in your own words this piece. Complex attitude system all the way till alien represents. If you had to put it in your own words, what would you say? Definition of XP, perfect. I don't disagree with that. But definition of XP is what the word is, what the sentence is. Can you also tell me what it means in a summarized way? Now I'm seeing other answers also. Definition of XP is correct. I'm absolutely in line with you. But also tell me what the definition is explaining in simple words. Hatred for strangers. Somebody has put it perfectly. Dislike towards the alien. Perfect. Perfect. You guys are getting this, right? So if you had to simply summarize this, at some level it is some negative feeling towards your stranger or alien. Dislike towards alien or stranger. Hatred towards strangers. Right? You can skim, but when you skim, you should be able to figure out what it's trying to say at a very basic level. That's why it's important. So you guys are perfectly correct if you say this. XP is something like hatred for aliens. Some sentiment. You guys got this. Now the question I have for you, a couple of questions, a very important question. So, and some of you are also correctly pointed out it is the definition of XP. That's also true. Now the question I have for you is this the definition the author agrees with? Yes or no? In fact, let's put it here if you guys want a poll out of it. We don't know. That's also a good answer that you can just put on the comments. So there is a little bit of ambiguity here, right, as to whose viewpoint it is. Some of you are not sure whether the author agrees with it. Some of you are perfect. The answer is this is provided by the author as the definition of XP. The author does not say in the last example, in the question 1, in passage 1, what you saw was, hey, this is one definition. The author specifically let us know, us being the reader, the author let us know that this is one definition. Hey, this is not necessarily my definition. Here is provided it as the definition, followed by the comma. When you see xenophobia, comma, a complex, what is this a complex describing? What xenophobia is, right? Do you guys see that? That comma has something to do, right? Xenophobia, comma, and what is xenophobia? A complex attitude system. I could instead put an in which also, it would be the same. For some of you who are still not 100% sure about this, I'm going to give you an example that should make this clear. All right. Let me see. Yep, we have, no, not this one. Just one sec. I'm going to make this crystal clear for any of you who still have a little bit of doubt about this. Yeah, let's just roll with this. Yeah. Look at that first statement. Look at that statement. Google, an internet company, is considered a good buy. So what follows? What is that internet company describing? What Google is, right? That's not up for debate. The author is presenting what Google is as a fact. Hey, Google is an internet company. He is stating a fact. You're right. Exactly. Here, the author, in the case of the passage, the author has given that definition as a fact. In fact, I'll give you one more example. Thanks, Shraddha, for bringing that. That's exactly what I was searching for. There you go. Look at that other example as well. Verbo is considered a unicorn, a company with $1 billion valuation. So now, will you say that the author does not believe that a unicorn is a company with $1 billion valuation? No, right? The author has provided to you what the definition of a unicorn is. That comma, what follows that comma is the definition of unicorn as per the author. He is given that definition as a stated fact, which means he believes it. Somebody put it exactly. So do you guys see what happened right there? So this is clear, right? Exactly. Perfect. So this is firstly the definition of XP as per the author also. It is the definition of XP as far as this passage is concerned. It is stated as a fact. Author is a logical person, so it is an author will agree with a fact. It is therefore definitely something the author agrees with. Now, let's move on. We have reached till here. Now let's move on. Some socio-cultural anthropologists even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Pause here, it's very, very important. Again, quick question for you. What is meant? Why did the author, first of all, put some socio-cultural anthropologists? Yeah, we'll discuss that, don't worry. Some socio-cultural anthropologists to ensure that you know it's not necessarily his or her view. Exactly, not necessarily. You cannot 100% be sure it's not the author view, but you can definitely say it's not necessarily the author's view. So some socio-cultural, so there are these anthropologists who even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Who can tell me what even is doing here? What does it even indicate? What is it trying to tell you? Extreme. Let's hear a few more answers. Emphasis, extreme, radical. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Going with the author, not really. It extends the initially highlighted part. That's a beautiful answer. Yet again, that's what we mean by emphasis. Some of you got this. Essentially, what the author is telling us is it's taking what is given in the previous line to another level. This will be very clear once I tell you what is opposite sides of the same coin. Some of you probably saw opposite sides and said that these two things are completely opposite. That is true. But when you look at any coin, right? If you take any coin, there is a heads and there is a tail, right? The one thing you can be sure about is if you take any coin, if you have a heads, you will always have a tails. Or in other words, they coexist. While opposite sides is a contrast, but the point is they are always together. You cannot have one without the other. In any coin, you will always have a heads and tails, right? It's not like heads is in one coin and tails is not there in that. No. If you have a heads, you also have a tails. So what the author is trying to say is coexisting. And now the role of even becomes more clear. Even connects the first line to the second line. Some of you pointed this out correctly, that it is an emphasis keyword. It's emphasizing what was told in the first line. So firstly, as per some people, EC and XP are closely connected. Now the author is saying, hey, they are not, as per some other people, that is his anthropologists, they are not just closely connected, they are so intimately connected that they're practically opposite sides of the same coin. They are so connected that they are practically coexisting, like twin brothers. Now do you guys get this? And I'm going to make this clear for some of you who might be a little hazy about what is this even doing here. I'm going to give an example right here of what even is doing here. Check out the example here. Check the example. Look at the first one. Shaq was the most dominant basketball player of his time. Some analysts even consider him to be the most dominant player of all time. Do you see what even does there? It's taking that first line and taking it to the next level. It's adding a layer of extremity to it. It's enhancing it, exactly. It is emphasizing the dominance of Shaq further. He was not just the most dominant player of his time, he's the most dominant player of all time. He's taking it to that next extreme. That is what even is doing. If I pair even with a not, I can take it the other way also. GDP is increasingly a poor measure of prosperity, but it is not even a reliable gauge of production. It's telling you that it's even less useful. Already it's increasingly a poor measure of prosperity. It's even worse. It's not even a reliable gauge of production. So do you guys see what even did here? Some of you, I think, enjoyed the example also. I see a little Shaq goat comments there. Perfect. That's good. So what the author has done here is pretty much the same. Some people believe that EC and XP are intimately connected. Then there's anthropologists are there who believe that they are not just intimately connected, they are so connected that they're practically coexisting. They're practically opposite sides of the same coin. Just this word even connects line 1 to line 2. And by the way, guys, this is the difference between how you read a storybook or a newspaper typically and how you read for GMAT RC. When you're doing GMAT RC passage comprehension, you have to connect information. That's something some of you are not able to make sense of a passage because this is the point where you falter. You don't make those connections when you read. You don't draw those inferences when you read. What you're expected to do is when you read the sentence, you should be able to connect this to the last sentence. If you have done that, you've understood the passage. Otherwise, impossible. Imagine skimming through the passage in 2 minutes and getting this meaning. Impossible. You'll be lucky to get the correct answer for a question like this if you're skimming. That's my guarantee. So let's move on. So far what do we have? EC and XP intimately. Some people believe they're intimately connected. Then there are these other people, anthropologists, who believe that they are so connected that they are practically opposite sides of the same coin. That is, they're coexisting. But is a keyword which indicates contrast. So now somebody is going to say it's not that connected also. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. So the opposite view. So everything you can get from this passage. In a more concise way, let's check this. Same point. What has the author achieved through this entire passage? First, he or she gave us the definition of XP. And this is a definition that he or she agrees with. He's given it as the definition, a fact in this particular passage. So he gave a definition of XP. He or she gave a definition for XP. Then he told there are some people who believe EC and XP are closely connected. That is here. Then he told there are these other experts who think that they're not just connected, they practically coexist. That is here. And then he says there are some other experts who believe that that connection is not that strong also. 4 pieces of information. Everybody with me so far? Feeling a little good about RC right now? 4 is that last line, by the way. Few voices of caution, this need not be the case. Now, similar question to the last time. How many of you struggled with this particular question? Let me just bring that in, just one sec. Yeah. Which part were you not able to understand out of this 4 that I've mentioned here? And that's where your learnings are. Oh, I'm looking at so many understood all, which I'm very happy to see. Usually I don't see so many, but yeah. It takes some time to get. By the way, everything we have done here, we are slow reading, making connections, drawing inferences as you read, and then making sure that you're understanding everything that's needed. All right. A lot of you struggled with the third point. So I'm sure you got you got confused by the opposite sides of the same coin. XP involves hatred for aliens. That if you have not understood that, whoever wrote that, right? If you have not understood that, then you did not summarize this well. Then you did not summarize what this definition actually told you. Complex attitude system, etc., all the way till here. If you had summarized that, you would say hatred for aliens. At least some kind of negative sentiment towards the stranger or alien. You struggled with the team consider, absolutely. Vis-a-vis as compared to, I mean, in comparison with. Something like that. So, concern is still with time management. Don't worry about time management. We are gonna get into that again. Don't worry about that. Vis-a-vis the stranger, the alien, even if you don't know what that vis-a-vis exactly means, you can understand from context, right? It's saying aversion, dislike, antagonism, dash, 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 vis-a-vis the stranger, the alien. You would say towards the stranger alien, right? It's the obvious inference. You can make that. Even I don't know what that means, but you can figure it out. That's the point. Again, I reiterate, you don't have to be an English scholar to do this. Logic. We will discuss that, don't worry. All right. So before we get into option choices for this, let's again kind of discuss a very important point. In GMAT RC, what exactly is a correct inference? The first point is, firstly, both as far as GMAT is concerned and as far as RC is concerned, what is a correct inference? A correct inference is what is 100% true if your given information is true. This is the definition both as far as CR and RC is concerned. The only difference that comes in RC is the role of the author is a little more prominent. In CR, very few questions have an alternate point of view and will ask you explicitly in the question for an alternate point of view. But in RC, the author, you can have multiple points of view in a particular passage. So the author's point of view is a little more of a strong point. You need to pay attention to it. So the first point, a correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. In other words, it has to be something the author believes in. That's the core point you should remember. If it's not something that the author 100% believes in, you cannot say it's a valid inference. Which is why in this passage, for example, EC, some people believe it's connected to XP. We don't know whether the author believes in that. You cannot infer that as an inference. So those of you who chose option B, C, etc., that's where your problem will be. Another aspect, and a lot of you have this doubt. An inference can be a restatement of given information. It does not have to be a new logical point. How many of you got a little confused by this? That, hey, isn't that definition already there in the passage? Is not new information. It's not a logical deduction that is being made. Exactly. So again, typically when you think about inferences, you think about what, if you have information A, B, and C, you think about what can be logically deduced, that is D. But as far as GMAT is concerned, an inference is simply what is true if the given information is true, and that can include the given information also. You don't see this a lot in CR. Very rarely I've seen questions that are practically restatement of what is given, but in RC it's a very, very common trap. If you have this notion that, hey, this thing is just a restatement of what is given, so how can it be a valid inference? Take that out right now. It is a valid inference. Inference is what is true if what is given in the passage is true. That can include what is given also, a restatement of given information. Which is why for this question, by the way, there is only one fact, that there's only one thing in the passage the author 100% we know agrees with. That is the definition of XP. It's a fact that is given by the author. The author is a logical person. He agrees with that. That is actually the correct answer. You will get a recording. And it's practically a restatement of that. It's basically a summarized definition of XP. That's the correct answer. Now let's talk about the option choices. How you guys polled, you can see right here at the bottom. Now we will be able to run through this very fast. Option A, XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Who says that? This guy. Different facets of the same concept, opposite sides of the same coin. Even to answer your question, even in inference is acceptable. It's just that you very rarely see it, but even in inference, sometimes you'll see that. Yes, you had A, but now I hope it's clear for whoever you are. Now I hope it's clear. This is being said by some socio-cultural anthropologists, not necessarily the author's view, and that's why this is wrong. Option B, very, very similar. So many of you, 27% of you chose option B. Canonical variants of EC are closely connected with XP. Deemed to be, if you fell for this, you did not notice this deemed to be, you do not understand what it really means. Deemed to be means it's not necessarily the author's view. Some people deem this connection to be that way, but not necessarily the author. Those who chose option B, logic is clear. Let me make sure, because it's the most popular incorrect option choice. Those who chose option E, option B, I hope it's clear. Perfect. Option C, I'm sure a lot of you chose this for the wrong reason. I mean, a lot of you did not choose this. Only 2% chose this. But amongst those of you who did not choose, who did not choose this, you might have chosen this for the you might have rejected this for the wrong reason. What is that? You might have thought that XP and EC are connected to each other. So if I had taken this out, this would have looked like a correct answer to you. But in reality, even that we are not 100% sure. We don't know if XP and EC, as per the author, are connected to each other. So either way, you should not have chosen this. Option D, surprisingly 18% of you chose option D. But think about it. Have we talked about the causality anywhere here? Is there any mention of causality? Do we know that XP is the cause of EC or EC is the cause of XP? How can you infer that? From where is this causality coming for you? Exactly, it's not mentioned at all. It's not something you can infer at all, which leaves the only correct cause effect. It will be tough to put it as an inference, but it can be written as an inference also. Yeah, but it's not stated anywhere and it cannot be inferred. Where can you infer causality here? If you let me know, I'll be very happy to see that. You cannot infer causality anywhere. Nowhere does it say that XP causes EC or EC causes XP. Both of them are not mentioned. So the only correct answer is right here. As we discussed, this is the definition of XP provided by the author as a statement of fact. The author is a logical person, so he will agree with a fact that he has stated himself. So, again, before I hand it over to Shraddha, what do you actually need to ace GMAT RC? 100% intent. Again, this concept was EC and XP. Most of us don't even understand that background. but it's okay. It did not matter. This is what I would really like you to take away. Why not B? Because it is the deemed view. We don't know it is the author's view. For whoever asked that particular question, we don't know if it is the view of the author. XP and EC are connected as per some people, deemed to be connected. We don't know whether the author believes that. Go back to that blue color example that I gave you. All right. So what do you actually need? 100% immersion. And when I say immersion, you see the kind of reading that we are doing, right? We are making connection between lines. We are drawing inferences as we read, bordering on the extreme. Looking at that, I'm making an inference. You should do all that while you read it, as you read it. So do you answer only author's view and inference? Unless the question stem explicitly states what can be inferred as per the scholar or as per the critic. If it's your regular inference question, as per the passage, that means author's view. Passage is written by the author. So when you're asking what can be inferred from the passage, it's by default the author's opinion, the author's view only. All right. A was also not author's view. It's a view of anthropologists. Again, go back to that. So read the passage slowly. That's what we did. Making those active connections, drawing inferences, focusing on keywords. All of you who fell for option B, you did not focus on deemed to be. Those of you who chose option A, you did not. Those of you who chose option A, you did not realize that it's only saying anthropologist's view. Anthropologists believe this. You don't know whether the author believes in that. That's the point. And the last point is summarization. If you don't do summarization when you see complex text, you will not have got this answer. That's again another learning for you. So again, for those of you who are interested in getting a study plan, right now we do have slots, so do consider clicking on this link and going with it. So let me just see if any other comments. Explained very well, thank you for that. Okay, etc. Inference is any point that can be inferred from the passage. It's not main essence. Main essence of the passage is main point. Recording of the session you will have. Vis-a-vis, from somebody from France. It means towards. Perfect. It makes sense. We were able to infer the same, right? Towards. We got the same meaning. All right. So I think I've answered most questions here. All right. So with that, let me invite Shraddha to take over the next portion of this passage. I'll see you guys in a while.
All right, so just to understand if I'm audible, let me just move things a little bit around here. Can you guys all hear me all right? Could you take to yes or no poll and let me know quickly? All right, so I guess I'm pretty much audible over here. Okay, so before I begin, I would really like to extend my thanks to Harsha. I guess that was phenomenal. The way he took us through both the difficult passages with so many jargon and so much complex information packed up in those small little passages. I guess it was a lot of learning also that we derived from that. So I just want you to continue thinking the very same way that you did for the second passage, especially because the first passage set the context. It gave you the tools how to go about doing RC. You use those tools and applied them in your second passage, and we all saw the results, and we all saw the level of understanding that you got from the discussion of that passage. And I want you to continue thinking the very same way. And now we are going to take a look at an official passage, which is actually considered a difficult passage. So here we go. Read the passage. Once you are done reading the passage, there are 5 questions related to this passage. We will solve first we will solve all the questions, and then we will discuss them one after the other. So take about 4 minutes to read this one. And once you are done reading, you can always come back and click on yes to let me know that you are done reading this passage. So take about 4 minutes to read this one, and then I shall be showing you the questions. So all the best. All right, I see many of you, I wouldn't say most, but yeah, many of you are done reading the passage. So whoever is done reading the passage, put in your response as yes, and I see that most of you are done reading the passage. So here I will make a few changes on the screen. I know that initially it was a little difficult for you to see the passage, so I increased the pod size over here, but now I'm gonna get in the polls for the question, and you'll see on the main screen the question. And I'm gonna bring in the passage also for your reference while you're solving the question. But before that, or in the meantime, could you please click on still solving, so that I know how many of you are participating in this quiz, so that we can time you for these questions, because as you know, we do not have any time limits for these questions. So here's the passage on your screen. It's a scrollable pod. You can scroll up and down to reach the point of passage you want to reach to. Could I have a few more responses? Just a couple maybe, just to get to the mark where I know that most of you are participating. All right, great. So here we go. This is our first question. The first question says the passage is primarily, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, so the passage is primarily concerned with, that's the question. I'm reading out the first few words so that you know that you're at the right place, because for some of you it might take a little time for the screen to stabilize. So there we go. Your first question. All the best. All right, most of you are done answering this question. So whoever is yet to choose an answer choice, let's quickly do so and let's wind it up. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to lock an answer. So let's do this. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right. Last minute takers, anybody? Or here, let me just end the poll. Okay, so Romil, we are going to do all the questions in one go. Okay, we are going to do all the 5 questions first, and then we will dive into the passage. Okay, So here is my poll for the second question. Before I show you the question, if you could click on still solving. You all are familiar with e-GMAT answering drills, you know. Whenever we take a question, first it has to be still solving, and then you could go ahead and choose the answer choices that you would want to. Few more responses. Let's show some enthusiasm. This is our last passage here. Okay, so here comes the second question on your screen. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage? So we are dealing with an inference question. Keep all your learnings that you had from your last question that you solved and apply the same over here, all right? So all the best. All right, 10 seconds, and then I'm going to close this poll. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, ending the poll here. Anybody wants to go for any choice last moment? Yes, no? All right, ending the poll here. Getting in the poll for the third question. Here I open the poll. Could you click on still solving, please? All right, very nice. Here we go. Question number 3. It can be inferred from the passage. Another inference question. All the best. All right, time to start my countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right. You have 1 more second before I close the poll. So here I go. Moving on to our second last question for the day in this session. Question number 4. Opening the poll, click on still solving, please. All right, a few more. All right, so here comes question number 4. The author mentions patient's age. That's the first few words of the question. All the best. All right. So in 10 seconds, we will be winding up with this one before we move to our last question. So let's finish this one up. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Alrighty. So the very, very last question for this session from our side. Let's do still solving before I show you the question. Not A, not C, not D, not E. I have, yes, good. So still solving, please click on that. Somebody clicked on E. Please check that you've put in your response in the right tab. And here comes the very last question. According to the passage, which of the following? According to the passage, which of the following? And there we go. So this question is taking a little more time. I'll allow you some time to finish this one. I don't want to rush you. So go ahead. Okay, so I can begin my countdown now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, before I end the poll, you guys can select. This is a little difficult one, of course, but you guys did phenomenally well with the rest of the questions, and this one is also pretty good. So here I end the poll now. I'm taking away this poll. I'm taking away the passage also from here. We will bring it in once we need it. But before I start the analysis of the passage, I want to hear from you. What did you think about this passage and the question and answer cumulatively? Was the was the passage easy, questions difficult, answer choices tricky? It indeed is 700. Too much reliance on inference, okay. Yeah, there are a lot of things that you'll have to, yes, a lot of decoding had to happen over here. Difficult, better than before questions, okay. Relatively easier to understand. All right. Okay, medium passage, easy inference questions, little harder. So my feeling about this passage is that the passage itself is pretty okay. But the questions tend to get a little complicated and the answer choices become complicated if you don't read them well. So let's quickly go through this. I know many of you are, kind of telling me, let's wind this up fast. So I'm going to move as fast as I can. All right, so Frazier and Mosteller assert. Okay, so F and M, 2 people. I've already, oh, my pen, okay. Here. So I have already, shortened this form. I'm going to call them F and M. No point repeating this. What really caught my attention in this passage was this word assert. The author is not saying F and M presented something or they suggested or they came up with a suggestion. The author uses the word assert. It shows that whatever F and M are going to say, they are very, very confident about it, and they put a lot of emphasis to that. So that's what caught my attention. Reading further, that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger and simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. So this is what they say, that medical research could be improved, could be made better by making them larger and making them simpler. Now, this point also caught my attention because in the same tone, F&M are saying that let's make it larger and let's make it simpler. So I took a pause over here, and it just made me think that something that we are suggesting to make larger, how could it make simpler? So that was my interest peg for this passage. That's what told me that, oh, I really want to know how this suggestion is going to work out, making something larger and simpler at the same time, and that's going to improve the clinical trials. So let's read on. So this is how you will also have to find out a peg that will keep you hooked on to the passage throughout. This is the mental adjustment, the attitude that Harsha spoke about right in the beginning of the passage. Moving further, at this point in time, actually, you can also make certain predictions that if the author is talking about larger, simpler, take a look at these words. These are comparative words. These are not absolute words. Larger, simpler clinical trials. That means the author is going to present the comparison that how current clinical trials are done and how, using the suggestion of F&M, they could be made larger and simpler, and as a result of that, better. So that's what the author is doing. Currently, at present, researchers collect far more background information on patients that is strictly required for their trials, substantially more than hospitals collect. You see, the author is already telling us that for these clinical trials, a lot of data is used, but then again, the author is bringing in this extra comparison. The whole point of this comparison here is to tell us, or to assert, or to emphasize the fact that yes, these clinical trials do collect a lot of data. They do collect a lot of the data than is really required. Okay, so that's the point that has been emphasized over here. I don't know, for some reason the things are not working. Okay, anyway, so thereby, again, my keyword that tells me the result, right? What is the result of collecting all this data? Escalating, increasing the cost of data, data collection, the cost of storage, and the analysis cost. So this is the cause is collecting a lot of data, and the result of that is it escalates cost of these things. Again, we come across another keyword. We stop here, although, all right, we are going to read contrasting information. So let's get ready for that. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study, F&M contend they have already taken into consideration this argument already, and they have an answer ready for that. What they say? Such risk, never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small in most studies. So what do we understand here is that, well, people are F&M, what they are saying, that hey, you're collecting too much data, don't do that, restrict the amount of data that you do. But then there could be a question that what if we take less information and we overlook certain variables that could be important for the study? So F&M, they've done their homework. They say that, hey, this risk cannot be avoided completely any which way. But yes, this risk will be very, very small for most of the trials that you're doing. Only in research on entirely new treatments are new and unexpected variables likely to arise. So F&M also say that, hey, if you're doing a trial to figure out the treatment for a disease that has never been researched before, yes, in that case you can collect a little more data. But for most of the things where you've already researched for the treatment, you really don't need to collect so much data. Okay, so at this point in time, I have one question for you. The passage starts by saying two suggestions: make the clinical trials larger and simpler. What do you think is this passage talking about? Which aspect? The larger aspect or the simpler aspect? The simpler aspect. Good. And I hope that you understood this even before I asked you this question. While you were reading this paragraph, you were able to understand that, okay, out of two proposals, this particular paragraph is talking about making the clinical trial simpler, because F&M are saying that, hey, do not collect so much data, keep it simple. All right, so this is what we read in this passage. So the first paragraph talks about the benefits of making the clinical trial simpler. Now we are moving on to our second paragraph. F&M propose not only, whenever we come across not only, we know but also will follow, which means that we are going to read about two aspects related to the topic in discussion. So what's the first point? That researchers limit data collection on individual patients, about which we just read in the preceding paragraph. Here it says, but also, okay, so they should do something else. What else shall they do? Researchers enroll more patients in clinical trial. So here the author is now explaining this larger part of the suggestion. include more patients in clinical trials. And what will be the result of that, as presented by thereby obtaining a more representative sample of the total population with the disease under study. So here we can draw an inference. The author is saying that if more patients, or according to F&M, if more patients are involved in a clinical trial, they will get more representative sample of the total population. This means that the way clinical trials are done right now, they do not present this representative sample of the total population. This is fairly simple to infer from this part. And the author actually substantiates it in the following sentences. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. A treatment judged successful under these conditions can then be evaluated under normal conditions, these ideal conditions, and then the normal conditions. So it is very, very important that you understood this difference between ideal conditions and normal condition. What is the ideal condition? So yes, let's talk about that. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions. That means the author has already spoken about these ideal conditions. And what is these ideal conditions? The conditions under which the subject of the clinical trial only has that ailment that is under research. That's it. So for example, I'll take a very contemporary topic, coronavirus. So corona had never been studied before. So suppose if we were to put this everything into the context of this passage, we would understand that present clinical trials are only including, or it included only those people into its study that had only corona and nothing else apart from corona. They didn't have any lung issues, they didn't have any kidney issues, they didn't have any heart issues, they had no other ailment, they did not have flu, they did not have cold, cough, sinus issues, nothing at all. Only and only corona at that point in time. That is an ideal condition, because come to think of it, human body is pretty complex. We cannot really say that at one point in time we would only suffer from one particular ailment. We really don't know what's going on in our bodies, right? So that's the ideal condition. When suppose if coronavirus, if the clinical trials are going on to find out the treatment for coronavirus, they are taking subjects only with corona. That's ideal conditions. But what is the normal condition? Normal condition would be, hey, just take whoever has corona. Does not matter if they have anything else. Okay, if they have anything else, just include more people, so that again, what will be the result of that? These trials will produce more representative sample of the total population and not of the ideal conditions. Okay, so it was very, very important that you understood this part in this sentence. So in this passage. So this is about making the trials larger. Now reading the very last part of this paragraph, broadening the range of trial participants, F&M suggests, so another suggestion comes up. In fact, F&M is now substantiating their suggestion. Why are they saying that, hey, broaden the range of these participants? Why? Would enable, what will it do? Would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions. So this is going to be the outcome if the clinical trials include more patients, not only those who have just that particular ailment under research. So what will it do? The treatment's efficacy or effectiveness can be assessed or can be tested for diverse patients who may have different medical conditions, because now you are taking into consideration a lot more people to conduct your study. And What is the additional benefit that might come out of that? To evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. So two things: efficacy of the treatment for different patients with different conditions, and the effectiveness or efficacy for different patient subgroups. Now here the author takes one step further to explain it to us what he means by patient subgroups. The value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to a patient's stage of disease. For example, we know that cancer is a progressive disease. It gets more severe as it progresses, and we know that it is categorized in different stages, and the treatment for different stages are different, right? So the author is saying that if you include more people with various conditions, then you will be able to test the effectiveness of the treatment on those patients also who have a progressive disease and could be at different stages. So you could see that, okay, the treatment that you've come up with, maybe it works with stage 2 people, but it does not work with stage 5 people because they are very advanced in their ailment already. So you have to come up with something else. So that's what this line is talking about. Then another example of patient subgroup is patients' ages. Patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy, and we all know that doses of the same medicine vary according to the age of the patient, right? For example, if you have to give a paracetamol, the dose for children who are, say, who are toddlers, the dose is different. For teenagers, the dose is different. For adults, the dose is different. So if more people are included in these clinical trials, the treatment or the effectiveness of the treatment could be tested on a variety of patients belonging to different age groups. Okay, so this is what the passage is all about. So if I were to do my passage summary, this is what I would say, that the passage starts by presenting a suggestion by F&M. They say that let's make these clinical trials simpler and larger. The first paragraph talks about how to make it simpler and the positives of it. The second paragraph talks about making the clinical trials larger and the positives of that. And of course, there are other contextual information to make these suggestions even more apparent. Okay, so with this understanding, let's now look at the question. Our first question was a main point question, and I just explained to you what this passage was all about. So let me bring in the poll for the question and let me broadcast the result. And there we go. Most of you chose choice D, which indeed is the correct answer, describing proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. That's exactly what the main purpose of this choice is. So 55% of you went with that. I don't see much contest over here. Yes, I see C and E, but I'll probably just talk about C. Evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical trial research practices. A very complexly written answer choice, which can totally throw you off. But if you decipher the meaning presented by this answer choice, you will say, oh gosh, this is just not right. Evaluating. First of all, we are talking about evaluating positives and negative. There was no positive, negative for anything. The suggestions, what will be the positive outcomes, and current clinical trials, where do they fall short? That's all it spoke about, right? Evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. So basically, this answer choice is saying that the main idea behind writing this passage is that the author has presented his or her evaluation about the shortcomings of the current medical research. That's what it says. And that is definitely not what the author is doing. The author has actually presented the suggestion made by FNM. So choice C is out and out and incorrect answer choice. Okay. All right. So with this, let's move on to choice question number 2. Which of the following can be inferred, inference question, about a study of the category of patients referred to in the lines? Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Okay, I'll quickly talk about this. Identifying 2 practices. By the way, FNM, it's just a suggestion. It's still not a practice in medical research. So that's why. That's wrong. In medical research, that may affect the accuracy of clinical trials. We are not talking about the accuracy of clinical trials. We are talking about making the clinical trials better. All right. So first, no 2 practices. FNM is still just a suggestion. They are not doing it. Secondly, we are not talking about making the clinical trials more accurate. We are talking about making the clinical trials better. Okay, improving the clinical trials. All right. So question number 2. What can be inferred about these studies in which those participants are selected who have no other ailments? So that's what this thing is talking about. So if we go back in the passage, we understand that it's talking about the clinical trials that only select those patients who have just that ailment. So first, the first point is that the results obtained are very, very limited. Right? They are very, very limited, and they are done only in ideal conditions because they do not have any other disease, not in the normal conditions. So these are some of the inferences that we can make. Limited applicability, only cover ideal conditions, do not cover normal conditions. So these are the only, some conclusions that we can draw. And as you can see, choice A is the correct answer for this question, and I'm glad to see that 43% of the class did go with choice A. So you did understand things out here. All right. Now, the closest answer choice that came to choice A was choice D, which says it would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that most important variable could be overlooked. By the way, very interesting. See how, again, learn this thing from here, how the test takers, they switch the context and they create incorrect answer choices. Limit information collection without increasing the risk. This was spoken about making the clinical trials simpler. Limiting information collection has got nothing to do with this part in the passage. This was about making the clinical trials larger, not about making the clinical trials simpler. This was in paragraph 1, not in paragraph 2. This line appears in paragraph 2. So you see how the author switched the context and is using one of the answer choices, bringing it from a wrong context. Okay. So that's why choice D is wrong. Choice E, again, same reason. Its finding would be more accurate. Again, the test takers have played on this over and over again. Accurate, accuracy, this and that. So, we are not talking about... Actually, it brings to my mind, we had a discussion and then this example was cited there. What would you mean by accuracy? For example, the researchers say that Moderna, let's say Pfizer vaccine will have 70% effectiveness. Okay, it will have 70% effectiveness, and that effectiveness come out to be true, that yes, it is 70% effective. That is the accuracy. right? But this passage is not talking about the accuracy of the treatment. It's not talking about that. It is only, or accuracy of the trials for that matter. It is only talking about, hey, you will improve the quality of your clinical trials if you do these things suggested by FNM. That's all the passage is talking about. So this accuracy part is everywhere incorrect. Same reason for doing away with any answer choice that says accurate. Okay. All right, C is opposite. Okay, so you have everything on the screen for this question. Let's move on. Third question. Again, the very same line. This time the question has been changed. It can be inferred from the passage that a study limited to patients would have which of the following advantages over the kind of study proposed by FNM. Mind you, if you remember the content of the passage, there is nothing that has been said advantageous about the current clinical trials. But the only advantage that we can even think about from the given information is that if the clinical trials are done in ideal conditions and not in the way FNM proposed it to be, then the researchers will have very limited amount of information to deal with. Why? Because they only select those subjects who have only that particular ailment and not all sorts of ailment from all sorts of patient subgroup and things like that, right? So that's the advantage that this question wants to know from you. And here I go. I guess you guys did pretty well with this question as well. In fact, the best so far. 63% of the class went with choice C, which indeed is the correct answer. All right. It would limit the number of variables. That's the only positive. If at all you can think about of something, that would be only positive factor about the clinical trials conducted in the present. Okay. Moving on to question number 4. The author mentions patients' age in the line. Patients' ages may also affect the treatment's efficacy, primarily in order to do what? Basically, it's a function question or a purpose question. In this kind of question, we talk about, we basically try to figure out the reason why a particular entity or a line has been used in that sentence. So once again, we are talking about what? Patients' ages. Why the author is talking about patients' ages in the very last line. The context of that is that if, the treatment vary according to the age of the patient. So if more people are included or across various age groups, if people are included, then the effectiveness of the treatment can be tested on people across different age groups. So that's the context why this was given in, basically to substantiate the suggestion made by FNM that, hey, let's make the trial larger. All right, so with this understanding, if I show you the answers here, once again, 62%. So second best answered question in the session so far, 62%. Illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of patients. That's the only thing that, yes, why the author has mentioned patients age group, because if you include more people, then you will be able to test the effectiveness of the treatment on different patients' age group. Okay, so I don't think we need explanation for any of, if why not C is for this one, indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. The passage is not about the passage is not about pointing out the reasons why progressive disease require different treatments. That is not the topic of this question or of this passage. Okay, that why do we require that? That is definitely not the topic of discussion in this passage. So this is totally out of context. Okay. Question number 5. I think this was the toughest question of all, and eliminating answer choices were really not easy if you did not understand the passage well. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. What is the question saying? According to the passage, which of the following describes a result of the way in which researchers generally conduct clinical trials? So we are talking about the results or the outcome of the clinical trials that are conducted right now. We'll break it down in 2 paragraphs. We'll first deal with the first paragraph. Remember the cause and effect over there about the current clinical trials? The cause was they collect too much information. And what was the result? The cost of storage, collection, so the cost of collection, storage, and analysis was escalating. It was very, very high. That was the cause and effect. If we look into the second part of this, we understood that because current clinical trials are done in ideal conditions, that's why their results or their application or the efficacy cannot be evaluated on a wide variety of patients. That's the cause and effect that we found out in these two paragraphs. So if the author mentions just one of it or both of them, should be correct. Now, the correct answer choice here is indeed choice A. The contest is always between A and C. I just see, four votes. That's what made the difference in this question. So let's talk about choice C. They avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings, even though doing so raises their research cost. Firstly, this has not been even presented as the result. Okay, this has not been. Clinical trials collect a lot of information, and that is why they avoid the risk of overlooking valuables. This cause and effect has not been presented in the passage. The only cause and effect that the passage talks about is because they collect a lot of information, thereby escalating cost of collection, analysis, and storage. That's the cause and effect the author has said. Okay, this point came later as an argument that, hey, what happens if the variables are missed? And then F&M has their own argument to deal with that. But this point has not been mentioned as an outcome of how the clinical trials are done. But even if that is the case, even if you could not figure that out, avoid the risk. What do we mean by avoid? Overlook. Totally avoid it, right? We just have nothing to do with it. The passage clearly says that no matter how much information you collect, one cannot totally avoid the risk of missing out on something. It just does not say that. The F&M is saying that no matter how much information you collect, there will always be the risk that you might miss some variable to take into account. That risk is not totally eliminable. That's what the passage says. That risk is not totally eliminable. It cannot be avoided. It cannot be avoided. So this verbiage is wrong, that they avoid the risk of overlooking. Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. There will still be the risk no matter how much information they collect. And that is mentioned in the passage, and that's why with 100% confidence we can reject choice C. Yes, choice C. Okay, so with this, I guess whatever questions that I could not take, many of you are in a hurry. You guys are telling me, make it fast, let's finish it off, whatever. So whatever you did not get it, go through the recordings which will be sent to you through your mails, and the PDF will definitely be shared at the end of the session. So do take a look at them. go back to those questions, those explanations that you did not get. If you have any questions, you can always ask us later. And that's about it from my side. Over to Harsha. Harsha, calling you back in the session.
All right, so guys, again, just a very quick check. Can you guys hear me? Yes, if you can hear me. Just to ensure that audio is not an issue. Perfect. So again, we come to the conclusions, the fag end of the session. I can see from the comments that a lot of you fell for option for the last question. So question 5 had its victims here, but it's a good learning point. Don't worry about it. So again, just to summarize our learnings from everything we did. This particular topic was related to pharma, right? It's big pharma, end of the day. We covered a topic with EC, EC and XP pharma, and what you see is the topic really does not matter as long as you can immerse yourself into it. So reading with intent because you want that score at any cost. Breaking down big sentences, making active connections. Again, let me draw your attention back to passage analysis for this particular passage. You remember how the first line talked about simpler and larger trials. From the very first line of the second paragraph, you figured out that this paragraph is talking about larger trials. That connection between sentences is what you should also be able to make. Identifying those linkages, drawing those inferences. You saw the relevance of all those keywords, and we did all that summarization. So the passage is deceptively simple in terms of reading it, but the reason it is considered 700 level are those questions. A lot of people falter in those 5 questions that you just solved. So now let's talk about what is it that you need to do. By the way, just a little bit of quick feedback. How many of you found this process to be interesting, something that hey, you can definitely take away and apply? Very interesting. I like to see that. Very good. Very good. So what do you need to do to take this further? So we introduced a process, we introduced a method here, which is reading slowly rather than skimming through. What you need to do further is to master this method. You need to practice this on like 20 to 30 passages at the very least to get the hang of it, the kind of thing that we're doing. And then you need to be able to look at data. As you solve these questions, you'll find out where you're faltering, and you should be able to look at the data and identify what you need to do, corrective actions as well. So now let's kind of talk about the elephant in the room. This is the one question that a lot of you have from the beginning of the session. What do I mean by read slowly in a time test? Why are we saying you have time? As in, how many of you have that concern about time? Like, how can you do all this in like 4 minutes? Exactly, right? A lot of you have this, and let me provide some stats to tell you some data to tell you how it actually happens. All right. If you're doing this slow initial reading, what we have done in these 3 passages, EC, EC and XP and FNM, in these 3 passages, what you have actually done is read the passage slowly. Once you have internalized this method, right now it's a session long. It takes a long time because you're still getting used to it. Once you have internalized this, once it becomes second nature, it becomes intuitive. It's like riding a car. Initially, it's very, very difficult. A little bit of practice, and then it becomes very automatic and very intuitive. Once you reach that level, that's where the magic happens. Then what happens is your standard RC passage takes you only 3 minutes to read, the way we read today. The more complex passages will take you around 4 minutes. If it's a real big monster, maybe a little more than 4, maybe 4.2 or 4.3, but that's about it. But once you have read the passage at this level, the real magic happens in the answer choices. Each and every question can be solved in lesser than equal to 1 minute. And that's where the magic happens. This is for a regular passage. For your extra difficult passages, the general observation is that the passage is so complex, but if you have understood the passage well, the questions actually take even lesser time. It takes much lesser time. So invariably, by this approach, what we have seen is it typically takes around 7 minutes or max 8 minutes at a per passage level. Now let's compare this with what must be a favorite for quite a few of you, that is a skim type of reading, where you read the passage initially very fast, as quickly as you can skim through it. That will take you around 2 minutes. But then you've not understood the nuts and bolts of the passage the way we have. When you do that, when you go to the answer choices for all these questions, you have a lot of trouble breaking through those answer choices and understanding what is really relevant, what is not relevant. So it takes you 1.5. In reality, it sometimes takes even 2 minutes to solve just one question. I mean, a lot of you have felt that before. Invariably, in terms of time, our method is definitely slightly better. At max, you'll take the same time. You have 7 minutes, not per question, per passage. You have 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes per passage. And don't just listen to me, listen to the students who have gone through this. The fundamental learning I want you to take away is, if you comprehend the passage at the level that we have done, which should take you around 3 to 4 minutes max, then any question that you answer will take you lesser than equal to 1 minute. And I'm going to prove this to you with actual anecdotal data. So let me move this out so that you guys can refer this as well. Look at what Anastasia says. She got a 740, got into Columbia, is an e-GMAT student. You should read all the text, not only the first and last paragraphs. And here's the point I want you to focus on. As long as you understand the whole paragraph, it takes only 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. That's where the magic happens. The more you read, the greater is your skill. Let me make sure that you have Anastasia's debriefs and study plans right here. Rather, YouTube links. Just one sec, guys. Yeah, there you go. So I strongly urge you to go through these video interviews, and I'll also bring in the debriefs. The reason for that is these are students who have gone through the same journey that you're trying to go through right now. You can learn from their experience. So go through the interview here. This is what Anastasia says. It took her only 30 to 50 seconds to solve those questions. Nishant scored a 740. Again, go through those links. Do not stress about timing at all. Take 3+ minutes to read. And if it's a complex passage, it's okay. Take 4+ minutes to read. That strategy has that initial investment of time. But after that, 45 to 60 seconds flat. We really mean that. We have seen countless success stories because our folks are able to do this. In fact, if you go to Nishant's debrief, that's the link right there. You can actually look at his ESR. That tells you a story. RC, this is including passage reading time, 2 minutes. So 4 questions, 8 minutes. That's the average time he's taken per passage. And this is pretty much the same time that you will take if you follow any other method. The point is you have to build your ability to this level. The slow reading of the passage, it does not take any more time than the current meeting. This is the current method. This is anecdotal data from me to you, just to tell you that this method works and time is not really a concern. You just have to be patient and build that ability. All right. Let's look at Dr. Rohit Singh Malan. Same problem. V27 initially. That's a score with which you don't get anywhere. But after applying reading strategies, he managed to improve his performance. By the way, not just in RC, also in CR. And this is something I attest to. When I was learning CR and RC, I started with CR. Then I moved on to RC. But what I observed was my CR ability jumped after I did RC because I've started reading arguments in a different way. The way that it's meant to be. So go to our YouTube channel. Lots of instances right now. There's at least 160 plus at the moment. Make sure you subscribe, check it out. If there are any other questions and feedback, please make sure you put it right here. We'll be happy to address those, especially related to the subject or related to strategy. We're here to help you out. Let me talk about what is it that you guys need to do. If you're an e-GMAT student, you already have access to the Master Comprehension course. Master Comprehension course is very, very important. It teaches you the building blocks of a sentence. It tells you not just how to construct a long sentence correctly. More importantly for RC, it teaches you how to deconstruct those extra long complex sentences. If you're able to do that, RC is not going to be difficult. Those those extra long passages with extra long sentences are not going to be difficult at all. We talked about pause points. Both in the FNM example and in the 2 examples that we covered, you saw how we were pausing at very specific points. We paused at, for example, I paused after bordering on the extreme. Why? Because I know that I need to get something there. So pause points covers those concepts as well. So if you're a e-GMAT student, you have access to this as well. Make sure you revise it and re-revise it. It's very, very important. Then we have the foundation modules of reading strategy. It will tell you each and every nut and bolt that is required. If you are not an e-GMAT student, you still have access to main point 1 and main point 2. These are available as part of your free trial. Do go through it. I'm sure it is going to be useful to you. So, end of the day, what is it that successful students focus on, as far as what is it that, and if you want to be successful, what is it that you need to do? Very simple. 100% immersion, as we discussed. Visualizing. What do I mean by visualizing? You're not just reading it like a storybook. You're not reading it like the way you read your normal newspapers or articles. You're reading with intent to understand. By that I mean you're making those connections between sentences, you're drawing those inferences. That's something you don't do. The minute you start doing that, you will see a strong improvement in RC. Using the reading strategies as key tools, and of course, as always, you need data to define where to put in effort. So with that, we are done with the main session. If you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to take them as well. If you guys want help with the study plan, please make sure you click on the link that's right here. And as I already told you, a study plan will really help you get the best out of your GMAT preparation. It will, or if you get in touch, we can help you design a plan that is absolutely tailored to what you require. I'm strong in RC. I do not require that much of effort in RC, but I'm weak in SC. I need to put in a lot more as far as SC is concerned. Let me also bring in the session PDF link right here for you. Just one sec. Where is it? Yeah. All right, guys. So let's. Anything else I can help you with? Anything else we can help you with? We also have Manas here. So if you have any queries about your study plan, remember right now we have slots, but those slots fill very fast. So those of you who feel that what we discussed was useful and you want to take it forward, be a little quick about it. Should we make physical notes as we read? Very good question. Let me answer that. The answer is, in the initial stages when you're learning the concept, when you're learning to read this particular way, it is highly recommended. As what you'll see is, as you get more comfortable reading the right way, you will see a reduction in your need to take physical notes. So over a period of time, you reach a point where you don't really require that much of note taking. Initially, it can be, but don't. The only caveat here, the only point I want you to take away is your notes should not be the entire passage. If you're writing down each and every point in the passage, that's probably not a good way of taking notes. Notes should be key points, and as you get stronger, you will see a reduction in your need to make notes. Inference questions are difficult. How to deal with them? How many RC? Yeah. So inference questions are among the trickier questions that we see in RC. They're there for a reason. Even in CR, inference questions, the harder ones are not easy, if you ask me. So once you start solving around 30, greater than 30 to 50 questions, you already start understanding all the patterns that are there. So yeah, around the 10 to 20, around the 10 to 20 passage mark, you'll always see a good improvement in your inference questions. How many RC should we practice daily? It depends on your plan, of course, but I always say read something daily. It may not be an RC passage, but do read something on a daily basis. But don't read it like a storybook. Even if you're reading a news article, try to read it the way we are supposed to, the way that we have tried to describe here. All right, any other questions? Any other general feedback? So let me also bring in the point about make sure that you guys register for the quant session that's there tomorrow. Some of you are looking for it. All right, Manas, is there any question there that you might want to take that I may not be able to take? If there's something, to feel free to jump in on the short answer call as well.
Right, so I see a couple of questions with regards to the contact details and the pricing. You can look at the course fees on the pricing page on the website, and if you want any advice on what program you should enroll for, feel free to contact us on support@e-gmat.com. In case if you're looking for any one-on-one advice on your current preparation or the strategy ahead, again, feel free to drop in an email on the support account, which is support@e-gmat.com. Any specific queries with regards to strategy? We still have a couple of minutes left. Feel free to ask any questions. So I have someone who says, can I have a customized plan? See, we have standard 6 months plan, and if you're looking for a customized plan, we would first want to see what's your current ability level, what kind of improvement you're looking for, how much time do you have. So drop in an email and we'll look into it. Study plan, again, you can book a slot so that you have a one-on-one session with the expert. If let's say you don't find a suitable slot as per your convenience, drop in an email. We'll try and book a slot as per your requirement. I think, Harsha, that is it. I don't see any other questions with regards to strategy.
All right, folks. Thank you for this. Thank you for being with us for, I know it's a long time. It's almost 3 hours now. I hope this session was helpful to you. Be sure to check out the quant session tomorrow, and definitely for those of you who are looking for critical reasoning, support in critical reasoning, do check out the critical reasoning session that we have on Saturday. That's the coming Saturday. With that, let's wrap this up. I thank you all for being part of this particular session. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.